following Jesus was not for the faint of heart. Time after time, his disciples' ignorance was exposed when they thought that they knew what they were doing and what it meant to be a follower of Jesus, and they discovered that really they didn't. This was very embarrassing for James and John. The disciples were walking down the road with Jesus, and James and John come up alongside him and say, Jesus, we've got something to ask you. He says, well, what is it? He said, when you come into your kingdom, we want to be your go-to people. We want to be your right-hand men, one on the right, one on the left. And Jesus says, you have no idea what you're asking. Firstly, their notion of what his kingdom was going to look like was way off mark. Secondly, they were assuming that to be a leader was to have other people serving you. And Jesus knew that being a leader was to serve others. That's why you lead, to create opportunity for other people to come into the life that is needed for them. So there are two basic assumptions about the world, about leadership, and also about their own place in this were exposed to be false. Fortunately, alongside of being a teacher, one who can expose us to the truth, Jesus was also gentle. The sympathetic high priest that the letter from Hebrews talked about, one who does not deal harshly with us, but is able to be approachable, who sees the disciples' fallibility and the falseness of their thinking, but doesn't reject them or make them wrong or make them less, but embraces them. And in that sympathetic embrace, we are not able not only to see the truth, but to take it into ourselves, which is what happened with his disciples. And it's progressive. It's not like they figured this out once for all and now they knew. Every day was a new day. And every day, probably they, like us, discover that the way we thought life was isn't actually the way life is. And who we think we are is not exactly the reality. And life is an ongoing, unfolding opportunity to step more and more deeply into God's truth. The truth about life, the truth about the world, and the truth about us. So, it's not for the faint of heart, because we like to think that we know what life's about. It's very anxious-making when we realize we don't. And what will happen? We haven't got it all figured out. We're not in charge of everything. Kathy was working for a marketing firm. It's a big pharmaceutical company, and she had an important position. And in her head, the most important thing was to make herself an essential part of the team. So she never said no to any request. She always said yes, and she always delivered. And it was hard for her to manage her emotions sometimes because this pretty much stressed her out. But she thought that's what she had to do. Then came time for a really big presentation, and she traveled ahead a couple of days in the hotel where she was making the presentation, getting everything ready. And she pretty much didn't sleep. Cat naps here and there, a meal in her room. She worked 48 hours a day. And then an hour before she was due to make the presentation, she fainted and collapsed. And as she was being taken away to the hospital in the ambulance, she thought, oh no, I have to be there. Everything will fall apart. And in fact, she did a great job of preparing everything, and her team was able to do the presentation. They got the contract, everything was fine. But this is one of those exposing moments for her, when she realized that the way she was running her life wasn't working very well. The things she was telling herself about what had to happen weren't so. Now, if she'd had an opportunity to be with Jesus, she might have discovered this before she went off to the hospital. If we have a sympathetic high priest, if we can go to somebody and feel safe to hear the truth before it hits us over the head, life is easier and more fulfilling. It doesn't take all the stress out, it's still not for the faint of heart. When I go to make confession, which I do sometimes, I did regularly as a young man, and as a young priest, I made confession to the person who's also my boss, Elder Stubbs. And it was great because I was so clear about Elder's love and care and regard for me that I could tell him anything, and did. And in coming to tell him how I saw myself, he was able to help me see a different side of things. And the freedom to know that I did not have to be perfect, that I could be confused, that life was a journey where I was continually discovering more and more about myself, was a great freedom. And hopefully, St. Mark's can become more and more of such a community. It is possible. It's possible out in the real world also. I heard about Kathy's story through a book, Communities Change, where, because she was part of a management program where the whole management team, as they identified their learning objectives, what they needed to do to become even better, each person in the team also identified what he or she needed to do to meet that goal. And they began to share those goals with each other. So they became a team that could know their weaknesses and help one another identify their weaknesses real time as they were happening. Not in the sense of putting each other down, but in the sense of building each other up. So if people can do that in a marketing team, maybe we could do it here in St. Mark's. And in many ways we are. One of the changes in self-concept that some of you are experiencing is that you are stepping into leadership. Now, mutual ministry review recently, people were saying, one of the things I didn't ever think of myself was a leader, and yet here I am, and you, John, keep expecting me to step into leadership, and that's true, I do. And as you do, it's right to be nervous about it, because as any of us step into leadership, our own inadequacies are revealed to us and to others. Leading a congregation in these times is not for the faint of heart, because nobody really knows how to do it. The world is changing so fast, the church is changing so fast, that it's a moving target. And yet, if we become a people where we really are following Jesus. Not only do we discover that who we think we are is not the case, what we think the world is about is not the case, what we think church is about is not the case. All of that we keep rethinking. But we discover that God is one who deals with us gently. And step by step and day by day, we are brought into the reality that we belong here on this planet. And that life is unfolding in a way which draws us more and more deeply into the heart of this reality. And in the heart of the reality, there is joy, and there is love, and there is belonging. So, are you up for the journey? Will you join me as we venture forth into this unknown path, where each day we discover, oh, got it wrong again. And will you deal gently with yourself and with me and with one another as we continually discover the truth into which Jesus is leading us? Yes? All right.